What happens when love becomes obsession and envy transforms joy into a nightmare? Karen had always been the subject of endless gossip in her neighborhood. She wasn't merely the woman who complained about lawns, fences, or parked cars. This time, she had done something so outrageous that everyone could not stop talking about it. She had purchased a massive whale, a creature so enormous that her backyard had to be redesigned to accommodate a special pool that took up nearly all of it. To Karen, this whale was not just an animal, but her pride, her closest companion, and the only soul that seemed to understand her. Every morning, she would carry buckets of fresh fish to the pool, watching the whale swirl and play in the water while speaking to it as though it could comprehend her every word. "You are the only one who truly listens to me," she would whisper, gently touching the water's surface as the whale responded with soft splashes and fountains of water that rose into the morning air. Her neighbors were unsettled and increasingly irritated. Some complained about the noise, the smell, and the sight of such a massive creature trapped in a suburban backyard, while others were consumed with envy over the attention Karen received. Yet none of the tensions brewing in the neighborhood could compare to the danger lurking inside her own home. Her house employee, a man who had access to every corner of her property and knew exactly how much the whale meant to her. One day, a longtime rival of Karen's, someone who had nursed resentment for years, approached the employee under the guise of a casual chat, slipping a thick envelope of cash into his hand with a quiet command. "Do something to get rid of that monster in her yard, and I will make it worth your while." The employee hesitated, conscience battling greed, but the lure of easy money was too strong. As night fell, when the streets were quiet and Karen was asleep, he crept into the backyard carrying a small vial of deadly poison. Carefully, he poured the substance into the pool, ensuring no trace remained on his hands, and then returned inside, heart pounding but pockets swelling with imagined wealth. The next morning, Karen awoke with her usual anticipation, ready to greet her beloved whale. She carried her bucket of fish and approached the pool with a cheerful greeting, calling out as she always did. But when she reached the edge, her happiness vanished. The whale floated motionless at the surface of the water, lifeless and cold. Fish slipped from her bucket onto the concrete as she fell to her knees, her scream piercing the morning air and drawing the neighbors to the scene. Instead of offering comfort, they gawked, whispered, took out phones, and treated her tragedy as a spectacle. Karen's sobs turned to rage as she shook her head, confronting the crowd. "How dare you all just stand there? This was my family!" No one moved closer. No one offered solace. Her grief and fury burned intensely as realization settled in. Someone had betrayed her, taken from her the one living creature who understood her heart. Her eyes scanned the crowd, noticing sidelong glances and hidden smirks. She knew the death could not have been natural, that foul intent had reached into her home, and the suspicion hardened into resolve. Karen called the police, her voice raw with fury, demanding an immediate investigation. Officers arrived, initially incredulous at the bizarre scene, a whale dead in a suburban backyard, but Karen's relentless cries and accusations left no room for dismissal. The investigation commenced immediately, with the area cordoned off, samples collected from the water, and questioning of every neighbor who had gathered to spectate. Hours stretched into days, and forensic results confirmed poisoning, a lethal substance too potent to be accidental. Tracing the crime led investigators repeatedly back to the one person with constant access to Karen's home and yard, her trusted employee. Under pressure, he confessed, admitting he had been bribed by Karen's long-standing rival to eliminate the whale. The revelation hit Karen like a second wave of grief, sharper than the first. The pain of betrayal compounded by the knowledge that it came from someone who had lived under her roof, shared meals, and smiled in her presence. As police escorted both the employee and the neighbor away in handcuffs, Karen shouted through tears, "You thought you could steal my heart and walk free? Justice will follow you like a shadow." Reporters arrived, cameras flashing, and the story spread rapidly. The woman with a backyard whale whose companion had been destroyed by greed and envy. Though the neighborhood buzzed with gossip and ridicule, Karen's focus remained on the pool, the still water marking the absence of her dearest friend. Weeks passed, the trial was scheduled, and Karen attended every hearing dressed in black, clutching photographs of the whale as proof that this was not merely a dispute over property or money, but a matter of love, trust, and betrayal. The courtroom was tense, and Karen vowed silently that every word she spoke, every tear she shed, would make clear the depth of what was lost, ensuring that the world understood the cost of envy and greed on the purest of bonds. Even in the face of betrayal and loss, a love so deep refuses to be silenced, and justice waits patiently for those who dare cross its path. Weeks had passed since the tragic morning when her beloved whale had been poisoned, and Karen remained consumed by grief, her every thought returning to the lifeless giant that had once brought joy and companionship into her life. The courthouse had become a second home for her, a place where she could confront the cruelty that had stolen her friend and defy those who had underestimated her resolve. On the day of the trial, she entered the building dressed in somber black, clutching photographs of her whale, her hands trembling, but her gaze unwavering. The courtroom buzzed with reporters and curious onlookers, many there for the spectacle rather than the story, but Karen's presence and her calm intensity silenced the murmurs as soon as she spoke. She recounted the events meticulously, describing every act of care she had given the whale, every morning spent feeding and speaking to it, the hours spent ensuring the creature's well-being, and the betrayal of the man she had trusted implicitly. The judge listened intently, the gravity of the situation dawning on the room as evidence of deliberate poisoning, witness testimonies, and the employee's own confession were presented one by one. Karen's words were a mixture of heartbreak and fury, a plea for justice not only for the creature itself, but for the principle that love and trust could not be trampled by envy and greed without consequence. The employee and the neighbor sat in the defendant's area, visibly shaken as the prosecution laid out a clear narrative of motive, method, and malice. Karen's voice did not waver when she directly addressed them, her tears glistening in the courtroom lights. "You did not merely take an animal from me. You took my family, my companion, the only one who ever truly understood me. You betrayed the trust of someone who welcomed you into her home and treated you as family. And though no verdict will bring my whale back, you will face the consequences of your actions." The trial lasted several days, with detailed forensic analysis showing the precise substance used to poison the whale, linking the act directly to the employee and tying him to the bribe offered by the neighbor. Karen attended every session, observing the proceedings closely, taking notes, and ensuring that every fact, no matter how small, was entered into the record. When the verdict was finally announced, both the employee and the neighbor were found guilty on multiple charges, including animal cruelty and conspiracy. The sentence was significant, ensuring years behind bars, restitution payments, and a public acknowledgement of their guilt. As the gavel struck, Karen felt a mixture of relief and emptiness. Justice had been served, yet the absence of her whale left a hollow ache that no punishment could fill. Leaving the courthouse, cameras flashed, reporters asked questions, and neighbors whispered, some in sympathy, others in fascination, but Karen ignored them all. She returned to her home, where the backyard was now a quiet, drained space, the pool a still reminder of what had been lost. She knelt at its edge, touching the water that reflected the morning sun, whispering softly to the air, "I will never forget you, my friend. You were my family, my joy, my heart." In the weeks that followed, Karen began the slow process of healing, honoring her whale in small daily rituals, ensuring that the memory of her companion and the love they had shared remained alive. She planted flowers around the empty pool, leaving small offerings of mementos that symbolized the bond they had shared. Her interactions with neighbors changed. She no longer sought their approval or attention, but instead walked with a quiet dignity, a woman who had loved fully, lost deeply, and fought for justice with unwavering determination. Though the story of the backyard whale became a topic of gossip, reported across local news outlets and shared widely online as a bizarre yet cautionary tale, Karen's experience remained intensely personal, a testament to the depth of attachment between human and creature, and a reminder that envy and greed often hide behind friendly faces. Even as life continued around her and the neighborhood returned to its routines, Karen carried the lessons of betrayal, resilience, and unwavering love in her heart, proving that extraordinary affection can leave a lasting imprint, even when the object of that love is cruelly taken away. Somewhere in the vast oceans, she imagined her whale swimming freely, far from the reach of those who haul.